Sand, a pistol, and the I-75, an expanded semi-documentary story of Aileen Wuornos. Prologue. The road speaks first and doesn't fall silent. At night, Florida smells of warmed pine, brackish marsh, and gasoline that evaporates so lazily you'd swear it was pondering the meaning of movement. I-75 stretches like a black belt, still slick from a quick storm, its surface catching streetlights in long splinters of pale. Above it, the sky grains with unseen insects and the rare jet. Somewhere in a ditch, a bullfrog thumps night stamping the paperwork. Roads are better archives than libraries. They remember whose boot crushed a cigarette on the white line, whose knee knocked the glove box, where a folding map lay already half-folded for the trash. The road knows who was hitching a ride and who was hunting. If asphalt had lips, it would tell you everything. But asphalt has only scars from tires and the small dimples that look like periods at the ends of long sentences. On this strip of intersecting highways, bars and motels, with views of parking lots, a woman appears, jaw set, walk scuffed, the gait of someone who's carried too many bags and too many sins. She looks perpetually tired. In her voice, a northern wind from Michigan translated into a hoarse Floridian drawl. Her name is Aileen Wuornos, to her own a simple Lee. She didn't fit in the pocket of what we like to call woman. She couldn't be soft on demand, and life had forced her to learn to shoot fast because slow decisions had always cost her too much. Stories like to start with a gunshot quicker that way. This one starts with frost and quiet, because every shot fire once was hoarfrost on glass. Part 1. Cold Michigan, the wood you carve knives from. 1956. Rochester, Michigan. Snow there doesn't fall, it happens. In a small house where the walls listen better than people, a baby girl arrives with an already knitted frown. A mother, not yet a woman by age, no longer a child by fatigue. A father, like a shadow, with a name that, when spoken, sounds as if mouths are full of needles. Best not to tangle with him, they say, words that stick to memory and explain too much while explaining nothing. Lee's childhood smells of tobacco, canned soup, and whatever medicine grown-ups pour into teacups to treat loneliness. A grandmother who is honey one day and vinegar the next. A grandfather who worships order on legs. The house has rules. Don't make noise. Don't talk back. Don't remember more than you must. And one law above the rest. Everything stays inside. From such laws grow people with flooded interiors. In the yard stands a maple tree. Beneath it, the secret caches of childhood tin boxes with buttons, candy wrappers, bits of glass that grin when the sun hits. In one such box, Lee hides her first important possession, a tiny mirror. She peers into it from under her brows. Who's there? The face looking back is too serious for its height. Mirrors have their own magic. They don't console, they confirm. School is a cold waiting room. The teacher speaks of addition. In Lee's head, other equations line up with minus signs. She learns to read lips quickly. It's safer to catch grown-up words before they are shouted. She also masters the invisible art of vanishing, how to pass unnoticed, how to stand so the wardrobe's shadow eats half of you, how to breathe until you're almost not there. At 13, the world explains itself without metaphors and with bruised clarity. Attention is a coin. The body is the purse. Quick. The way winter days are quick. The way someone else's hand is quick. The way trains with no timetable are quick. At 14, pregnancy. At 15, banishment. The door closes so flat it feels like it had never been open. She carries out of the house only the skill of not crying when your lips go white. That year, the woods behind the subdivision hear too much whispering. Teenagers share cigarettes. A metal flask makes tongues go woolly. The night sky has no moral objections, hunger even less. Lee leaves not for the wide world, but for any weather, into the trunks of friendship, the cabs of old Fords, the seats of other people's bikes. A skinny girl in a puffy coat quickly learns that the world's generosity is just luck in costume, and it always runs out without warning. Part 2. A survival manual. Volume. Highways, bars, cheap motels. 17 to 20. Lee Thumbs rides along shoulders from Michigan toward states, with more sun in their dictionaries. She absorbs the geography of talk. If a driver is silent, let him be. If a driver talks, let him talk everything. If a driver reaches for the glove box, watch how he reaches. Cheap motels smell of carbolic and tired bedding. The bathroom soaps are chalky, like white erasers. Do they erase anything? 1976. A man in white trousers appears. A yacht club, promises of a quiet harbor. A photo with this man looks like it was taken at someone else's wedding. The poses are right. The eyes are not. Even harbors have squalls. Love may have tried to sprout, but she wasn't given light-only instructions. Be someone else. Lee cannot be someone else. The marriage pops. On the shoreline, tatters of tulle and a rehardened habit of loneliness. In the 80s, Florida becomes her handbook. Bars with noisy names, where veteran mechanics and weary truckers nod to bartenders like to captains. Beaches where tourists know the ocean to the knees and locals know it to the scars. Daytime shoulders are a grill. Nighttime is a sticky blackout. Here, Lee counts constantly. Dollars as seconds, seconds as bullets. Here she learns to smile without her eyes. This is not the romance of the road. It's the economics of solitude. Part 3. Tyria, the last resort, and holding friendship with both burned hands. The last resort is a bar where gossip burns grooves into varnish as deep as cigarette tips. On the walls, cheap deer heads, flags, medals awarded for mood, not deeds. You can talk there without words. A beer set on its side means, tab me, I'll pay later. A coin pressed into the groove under the ashtray means, I'll be back. There, Lee meets Tyria Moore, a woman with carefully gathered sadness and a laugh that grows downward, not up. They look at each other like two people who found a winter coat in March. Their rooms aren't cozy so much as a truce, between hunger and enough, between tenderness and irritation, between I'm needed and I'm afraid to lose you. On the nightstands, plastic roses, empty jars of cream no one uses. When cash runs out, the universe's patience does too. Love keeps a shadow ledger. Warm evenings are paid for in mourning. Held warmth is invoiced in cold figures. Lee buys what will get them breakfast. Another night of work on the shoulder. Another conversation with a man who smells of loneliness and gasoline. In the bag lies a small .22, not so much a weapon as an argument. In a world that respects arguments more than apologies, that passes for logic. Part 4. Summer and Winter. 1989-1990. 7 short chapters that refuse to be legend. History likes to count. 1, 2, 7. But if you close the notebook and step outside, you realize the numbers overlay lives with cracked coffee mugs, favorite boots, bad habits, good intentions. In the series that eventually lassoed headlines, there were 7 men. They were different and equally mortal. I'll speak each name briefly, without heroizing like reading a lost person's pocket diary, with no right to embellish. 1. Richard Mallory, 51, an electronics repairman, the kind of man who might have fixed strangers' radios until old age and died unknown. Late November 1989, their paths cross. Night. Pines talk the way they do when they're gossiping about human fate. Strong hands aren't always for embrace. Then fear. Decisions made too fast. Shots at close range. He's found in the woods of Volusia County. His car is found earlier, as if metal always returns quicker than flesh. 2. David Spears, 43, May 1990. A construction worker. He liked the predictability of shifts, knowing when the brake would ring. He vanishes between "be right back" and "where is he?" Grass along the highway knows our plans better than we do. 3. Charles Carskaden, 40, late May. A roadman, like so many. Focused, a little superstitious, quiet. Bullets smother something that might have been avoided, but this series' world runs out of time for might. 4. Peter Seams, 65, June. A retired seaman, a man who trusted horizons. His body will never be found. His car will in a crash into a fence, after which 2 women walk away briskly, leaving not so much a trail as a plot. Witnesses remember faces. Witness memory is dangerous because it loves ornament. 5. Troy Burris, 50, July, a delivery driver. In small business, the world is checklists. He lived by items and tick marks, and never thought the last tick would fall on his family like a ridiculous meteor. 6. Charles Dick Humphreys, 56, September. A veteran, a social worker. People who carry other people's burdens rarely have time to unpack their own. His disappearance is like a porch light going out, burning a moment ago, and suddenly dark. 7. Walter Antonio, 62. November. Found off a woodland road. The list is complete. Though stories like this have no real last, only alphabets that run out of letters. In every episode, the point 22, intimacy turning into a threat, or the felt threat of it. Empty wallets, pawn slips, ties flung aside, cars as currency. And Wuornos' refrain later, he attacked, I defended. A complex formula in a world that prefers simple arithmetic. But on shoulders, the math is different. There, minus times minus almost never makes plus. Part 5. Drawing the net. How threads find their knots. Investigation is not fireworks. It's crochet, where several patient hands tug different strands until the pattern shows. Here, the pattern developed slowly, as if in a dark-room tray. The main thread is July 4th, 1990. Holiday. Night. Noise. A crash in Peter Seams' car. 2 women leaving the scene the way people leave a party that turned too loud. People remember tattoos better than faces, gestures better than names. The sketch artist in the precinct will draw their portraits a flake at a time on the basis of other people's, sort of. Second thread pawn shops. That business knows a city deeper than it wishes, lives at discount in glass cases. Items tied to those days surface. On receipts are signatures left by a hand tired of writing false names. Third, thread bars. They are home ports. The list of those who drink on trust is always shorter than the list of those who drink on credit. At the crossing of names and dates, a likely geography of Lee and Tyria begins to show. Fourth thread, the voice on the phone. Tyria chooses to cooperate, not out of malice, but of survival. In a motel, she calls Lee. The recorder hums. Lee says, no, first, then, if you knew, then very tired. Yes. Confession rarely looks like a cinematic monologue. More often, it's the silence between 2 exhales. Fifth thread, the last resort. Lee is picked up there formally on old petty grounds, informally as prime suspect. For a place like that, a police day is a rare squall. Everything looks the same, but the air tastes of salt and sudden movement. Part 6. Court as stage, stage as court. Whose microphone is louder? 1992, Florida. The trial for Richard Mallory is the central act. The gallery's full. Reporters with poised notebooks, camera crews setting lights that flatter no one. Defense counsel has heels ground down by experience, and the eyes of a man who studied every breed of juror. The prosecution is a honed team convinced that truth is what can be explained in 3 paragraphs. The key procedural fork is the court's decision to admit similar fact evidence. The other murders will hum as a chorus behind Mallory's solo. Judges love system, and a chorus is simpler than 7 arias. But choruses crush nuance. The defense tries to build a bridge from trauma to reaction, to show that Lee's life was one long state of alarm, that in her world, a man in a car is not an abstraction, but a potential threat. Bridges of words fall, however, if documents are held back. Mallory's story wasn't white. There were cold shadows in it. But courtrooms aren't always ready for crowded gray. Juries often like contrast, even when it's temporary. Witnesses speak economically. Saw, heard, I think. Experts speak lengthily, borderline, antisocial, trauma. The press likes both. Juries like simplicity. Here, self-defense doesn't play like music. It grates. Too much had been said before it and around it. Verdict. Death. Not lightning from a clear sky, but a tower built year by year. Afterward, Lee acknowledges the other episodes, not grandly, but with the exhaustion of someone kept too long in bright light. Pain doesn't always choose good words. When a person has nothing left to lose, they sometimes choose short ones. 1993-2002, drag with appeals, interviews, revised versions, relapses of memory and despair. She alternates between the claim of self-defense and I did it, as if stepping into the role that was written for her. Psyche phrase, truth delaminates. The press buys new tapes. October 9, 2002, an execution morning. Coffee, the last warm cup before the void. Final words like a corrupted cassette, a mix of myth, prophecy, and a wish to finally kill the lights. Part 7. Where the string rang thin, errors of police and court files rasp differently when they hold publishing contracts. Around this case, talk of book and film rights began too early. Commodifying an investigation isn't a crime, but it treats public trust the way salt treats metal. Rust blooms. Were they chasing truth or a pitch? Admitting similar fact testimony turned the conversation from what happened with Mallory to what sort of person is Wuornos generally. Jurors aren't machines. It's easier to judge character than moments. The law keeps that door ajar, but the wind it lets in changes each time, often blowing doubt out of the room. Context of the trade was thin. Highway sex work is turbulence by default. People there slip from client provider to threat defender in 3 seconds. The court owed itself more expert testimony on the mechanics of fear in that line of work, on the statistics of assault, on how fast "be quick" turns into "why is there a knife in your hand?" Editing context impoverishes meaning. Self-defense as an unfinished bridge. The defense had facts. Psychiatrists had terms. Between them, no taut cable was strung. What was needed was a meticulous map of injuries, not a diagnosis, a trajectory. How hypervigilance becomes a preemptive strike. The court got a schematic when it needed a model. The media storm. Newspapers and TV serialized the trial. Prosecutors became the show's heroes. The defense a group of explainers. The court became a stage where applause bled into verdict. These errors don't erase the dead or print indulgences. But they are markers, the kind that, if remembered, might lead the next case closer to honesty, if we bother to remember where the string quivered. Part 8. A psychological profile. How a storm lives without a roof. Trying to understand Lee is like standing on shore in a hurricane, explaining wind direction. Try anyway. Chronic childhood insecurity. When danger is domiciled at home, the brain calibrates to a permanent siren. The amygdala fires before logic. When before logic lasts decades, behavior becomes anticipatory. Hit first becomes a method of seeing sunrise. Complex trauma. Not one wound, but a sedimentary layer of them. Rejection, assault, hunger, stigma. Trauma isn't a stone. It's shale formed by decades of pressure. Where a typical person sees awkward, the traumatized sees danger. The difference between I'm scared and I shoot is counted in the night's few seconds. Borderline personality traits plus antisocial features. Emotions are stray dogs that clamp down and won't release. Intimacy is desired and terrifying. Black and white thinking is an attempt to simplify a kaleidoscope spinning too fast. Antisocial features seldom mean born bad. More often, years of living where the only rules you can obey are your own. Self-medicating with substances. Alcohol is a cheap kill switch for alarm, but switches don't respect rooms. They douse judgment and memory as well. Morning brings a crater that must be filled at once. A high turbulence environment. Night shoulders are a trait of risk. A sex worker there isn't a film noir siren. She's a person counting seconds, reading the angle of a client's forearm and her own distance to the door. The pistol is a crutch, and with a crutch, it's easy to limp even when the pavement is smooth. Lee's profile is that of someone long deprived of footing. In such a life, even simple choices resemble leaps across chasms, and complex ones are leaps blindfolded. We needn't pity to understand the mechanics. We must understand the mechanics if we intend to judge. Part 9. Timeline as Pulse. Extended. 1956. Born in Michigan. Early cracks. 1960s. Raised by grandparents. Religious severity. Emotional whiplash. Violence. Isolation. Early 1970s. Teenage pregnancy. Baby surrendered. Thrown out. Living under the sky. 1976. Brief marriage to an older yacht club man. Rupture. Return to drift. Late 1970s, 1980s. The geography of survival between states. Petty arrests. Dependence on bars and weather. Florida becomes base. Tyria Moore enters. Mid-80s. Nov 1989. Nov 1990. 7 roadside murders in Florida. Small caliber firearm. Theft pawning of victims' property. Used disposal of their cars. July 4th, 1990. Crash in Peter Seam's car. Witnesses. Composites. January 1991. Arrest at the last resort. Tyria's cooperation. Recorded confessions. 1992. Mallory trial. Similar fact. Chorus admitted. Death sentence. Subsequent pleas on other counts. 1993-2002. Appeals. Psych evaluations. Interviews. Oscillation between self-defense and I did it. Media exploitation of the image. October 9th, 2002. Execution. Part 10. 7 names. 7 short portraits without grease paint. Richard Mallory. His workbench probably held old tin signs and screwdrivers that had favorite screws. He could be cruel and kind. People are built that way. The night turned him into a story people use like a pry bar. David Spears. Maybe boots with scuffed toes, a plastic lunchbox with edges of bread gone hard. Working people eat simply and honestly. His day ended like a sentence without a period. Charles Carscaden. At gas station diners, he drank coffee no one can love but everyone can thank. The road knows him better than we do. Peter Seams. He trusted horizons, the slow sway of a deck, the low conversation you have with yourself. On land, horizons stand closer, sometimes deadlier. Troy Burris. Minor commerce runs on major lists. He lived by bullet points and check marks. Charles Dick Humphreys. His business card might have been a little bent. People who help others rarely protect their own paper. They protect strangers. Walter Antonio. A man on wheels who knew the best greasy spoons between 2 highways and could smell if they fried without hurry. Let each keep a proper human space in memory, not just statistics. Part 11. How they caught her. Simple ideas, and the long memory of things the silhouetted witnesses. Two women stepping from a crumpled car in front of people who already have phones in hand. More than a picture, a mechanism. Memory hooks on hair, and t-shirts, and scratches on cheeks. Memory errs but adores detail. Pawnshop threads. Receipts never tire. They carry dates, signatures, accessories. Objects outlive owners. They do their owner's work, telling where they went and where they landed. Bar maps. Sailors have home ports. Lee did, too. Cops don't look for a needle in a haystack. They switch on the light in the shed where needles are kept. Proximity is bridge. Tyria is no traitor. Tyria is a human wanting to remain. Her decision is an attempt to survive a storm where the life ring is too small for two. Monotone confessions. When confession is exhausted, truth sounds like sand pouring from palm to palm. That doesn't make it less true, just gives it a particular timbre. Part 12. Fate as montage. Monster, victim, and the heavy middle. The image of a female serial killer is media candy rare and high contrast. It breaks the template, and breaking the template sells. Lee became a poster quickly. Posters cover cracks in walls. They don't fix walls. Take the poster down, and two truths remain. First 7 deaths, each absolutely final. Second, a biography that began in frost, where love was an expensive shop window item and protection was practice on stray cats. Courts are not in the charity business. Society must be in the consequences business. We like to believe monsters come out of forests. More often, they are grown in our kitchens. Part 13. Documentary shadows. The case file brought into light. Picture an archive room. Gray folders, green folders, brown boxes, glue that smells of yesterday. On one spine, Wuornos, A. Inside, a pawn ticket with a greasy fingerprint. On the back, hurried signature. The ink runs like time. A highway sketch with red X's, as if a child taught adults a game. A Polaroid. A car, crime scene tape. 2 figures pixelated by memory. A cassette labeled 3. A scratch across its shell. Press your ear to it, and the magnetic particles whisper. A court calendar. Hearing dates marching like the notes of a march. At the bottom, verdict. Paper doesn't pity. It preserves. Part 14. The barroom chorus. The secondary voices without which no primary exists. These stories contain people who won't make any list, yet without whom the lists would not exist. The bartender at the last resort, who recognizes her people by how they set down a glass. Some careful, like guests, some proprietary, like homeowners. Some don't set it down. They drop it. Lee placed hers near the edge, as if ready to pick up and go. The pawn counter clerk who chooses between don't get involved and call. He chooses the latter. His choice is a thin thread. Without it, the weave unravels. The motel neighbor who filed a noise complaint. The complaint is in the file. Her life is outside it. That's how it usually goes. The cop who never made the docu-series. He writes reports without metaphor, eats a burger in the cruiser, and never thinks his pedantry will be the one brick without which the building would collapse. The chorus outlines the melody. Part 15. Florida's psychogeography. Where heat meets the cold of people. Florida isn't only an attraction, it's a warehouse. Heat stings skin like pins. Inside people, a cold, no AC can melt. The roads are straight. Lives along them are not. Cheap motels smell the same in any town. Bars name themselves louder than they sound. Water is always near. Shore is always far. In that climate, it's easy to believe the world is a giant parking lot where everyone has a car, a trunk, and a secret under the mat. Lee seemed to breathe well in such air. In truth, she was choking only with her back stubbornly straight. Part 16. Theater of law. Fragments that could be in a transcript. Ma'am, you claim you defended yourself? I claim the ones who taught me to survive aren't in this room. Why so many times? When the world is a knife, even a spoon looks like a weapon. Do you understand the gravity? I learned to carry weight too early. These are not lines from the record. They're the intonation of a story courts don't write down. Courts have a lexicon where trauma is circumstance, fear a motive, and life a term. Part 17. Rehabilitation as the impossible and as the necessary. There's a temptation to rewrite the ending to make it bearable. Give the court more doubt, Lee more help, the victims more time. Literature can't replace justice. It only points at the holes in justice's coat. This story has many holes. Child services that didn't or couldn't. Communities with no reserve of care. Courts that love structure more than the chaos of reality. Rehabilitation here is over. But prevention is not. We need to talk about childhood poverty, violence neighbors don't see, sex work in gray zones, the places where citizens become risk vectors. If we don't seal the entry doors, the exits will keep looking the same. Part 18. Pocket allegories. What remains in the hands, imagine Lee's palm. Road dust, a crumpled bill, 2 coins, a motel key about to be returned, and a small cartridge like a thimble. In the other hand, nothing. Between these hands, her life. In the left, she places fear. In the right, hope. Then she swaps them. Then loses the right glove. Imagine one of the men's palms. A ring groove where the ring no longer sits. A square of caramel for a grandchild. A gas receipt. Between these hands, absence already. Filed as case no. Allegories are powerless before reality. They only help us remember that every story once had hands. Part 19. A list of the absent, the ones who were always too late. A teacher who might have held Lee after class once and said a simple human thing. You can stay here as long as you need. A social worker with too many cases and too few hours to notice the silence between words. A good lawyer on that very first petty arrest. Someone who would explain not how to get out, but how not to come back. A clinician who would ask not, where does it hurt, but who hurts beside you? A neighbor who would knock once and say, I know the smell of trouble. I'll sit with you. Not romantic fantasy. A concrete map of where to put people, so later we don't have to carry bodies. Part 20. Epilogue. The highway. At Knight's second attempt at saying the essential, after the execution the road didn't disappear. Roads don't know how to die. The pines still smell resin sweet. Puddles still mirror headlamps. The bartender at the last resort still swaps empty kegs for full, and sometimes catches himself watching the door for someone who won't come. People argue, and will. Was there a night when self-defense carried full weight? Or were they all hunts? Those arguments mattered to lawyers, to newspapers, to anyone afraid of seeing a shadow in the mirror. More important is what we do in the morning. If we had a time machine, we wouldn't drive to the shoulder. We'd stop at that Michigan house where a 14-year-old girl was pointed to the road, the way you point to a dumpster. We'd pry the ice wedge out of her chest and replace it with something simple and inexpensive, a grown-up who doesn't leave. The story of Aileen Wuornos is not about pardon and not about pillory. It's a warning scorched into the shoulder so others might read it in time. Where cold childhood meets hot asphalt, people with pistols in their purses and secrecy in their eyes are born. If we want fewer bullets, we need fewer Frosts. If we want fewer legends of monsters, we need more kitchens where people talk.